Hello and welcome to this live stream as we do a recap of Chapter 8 of Adam Hamilton's book, Words of Life. We're looking at the 8th commandment this week, thou shalt not steal. We've been doing these studies on Tuesdays over Zoom. We've got 2 more weeks to go, and if you'd like to join us, even if you've not been able to do so before, we'd love to have you. Just let me know and I'll make sure that you get that Zoom link if you haven't been already. But as we look at this week's commandment, thou shalt not steal, on the face of it, it is a very easy and simple one to understand. It is saying, do not take someone else's property. Don't take something that belongs to someone else. And I think that this is one of those that for everyone watching this video, you're like, yeah, I don't do that. And that is not a temptation. That is not a temptation for me, especially as we look just as at kind of that face value of the commandment. But the title of the chapter that Adam Hamilton uses is somewhat of a provocative one. The name of the title is "We're All Thieves." Yes, even you. So what does he mean by that? In what ways can we kind of expand this commandment out to help us in our daily walk so that our discipleship grows as we kind of consider this commandment? And I think in some ways, the ways that it's expanded out are very applicable to us, beneficial for us to consider. Not necessarily ones that I think if you break these actually means that you're breaking this commandment, but ones that are just helpful for us to think about in general. One of the ways that kind of gets talked about in the video that goes along with the study is that if you are someone who is perpetually late, that you are stealing time from other people. That in some ways what you were doing is showing disrespect for this other person's time. Hamilton gives an example of how this one kind of speaks to him because he is someone who is perpetually late. And that as he was thinking about that commandment, that that very week he was 5 minutes late to get a haircut. And that he knows that the person cutting his hair kind of schedules people with a 10-minute gap in between so that she's able to clean up her station afterwards and is able to get a snack or run to the restroom or whatever else in between customers. And that as he's late, it means that her time in between his cutting and the next is cut short, and she's not able to do some of those things that she would want to do otherwise. It's just a small thing, but in some ways shows kind of a lack of respect for that other person's time. So being on time is one way that we can kind of live out an extension of this commandment. Something else that sometimes happens is that maybe someone steals credit for something that someone else does, or in a school scenario uses someone else's work, whether they realize it or not. Or maybe even there are times that we have an error in some sort of accounting that goes in our favor. We order a dessert after the fact at a restaurant and it doesn't get added to the bill. If we aren't kind of good about pointing out those errors that are in our favor, but we're especially good at pointing out the ones that aren't in our favor, that in some ways is theft too. A question that Hamilton asks in the book and in the video is, what price do you put on your integrity? Even in situations where nobody else will know what's happening, maybe especially in those times when no one else will know what's happening, are you going to be fair and honest to the fullest extent of your ability? Whether that's in a bill that you get at a restaurant, or making sure that you are paying your taxes in a way that follows the law to the best of your knowledge. Are you living out a life of integrity in all of those areas too? There's also kind of a discussion about a saying that we probably hear a lot, as children, about finders keepers, losers weepers. And is that something that we actually think holds up if we want to be people who follow this eighth commandment? With the answer being no. If there is any possible way to reunite someone with something that they have lost, that is something that we should do. Kind of a remedy, or maybe a test that we can try to kind of pose to ourselves to help us figure out if what we're doing is right or not, is to kind of hold it up to the example of the golden rule of doing to others as we would have them do to us. If you find somebody's wallet and it's got money in it and it's got their contact information, well, then my goodness, wouldn't we want someone to try to contact us if they found our wallet with that contact information so readily available? If you're in an area where there's a lost and found, wouldn't we want someone to place something that we had lost in that collection box? There's also just a few sentences in here that I'd like to share with you, kind of along those same lines. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's such a simple guide. Would I want others to let me know if I had undercharged them? Do unto others. Would I want others to ding my door without saying anything? Do unto others. Would I want to be taken advantage of by my employer or have credit taken for something that I'd worked hard on? How would I feel about someone stealing my time by being perpetually late? Do unto others. When you're not sure if what you're about to do is stealing or otherwise unethical, run it through the golden rule test. Would I want someone to do this to me? A very good and maybe simple way to kind of think about a lot of our actions, not just in connection with this eighth commandment. There's also kind of a passage from James chapter 5 that gets talked about in those examples that I was just mentioning about do unto others. It talks about employers, employees. And there's this passage from James 5 that gets mentioned that says, "Pay attention, you wealthy people. Consider the treasure that you've hoarded in the last days. Listen, hear the cries of the wages of your field hands. These are the wages that you stole from those who harvested your fields. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of heavenly forces. You've lived a self-satisfying life on this earth, a life of luxury. You've stuffed your hearts in preparation for the day of slaughter." Not really an easy one to hear, but one that reminds all of us in positions where maybe we are hiring someone for a big or a small job, to make sure that we're treating them fairly, that we are giving them a wage that is fair to what it is that we're asking of them to do. Well, kind of the opposite of do not steal. If we want to think about, well, that's what we're being told not to do. If we want to kind of look into the New Testament and think about maybe what is a positive that we are being asked to do, maybe in addition to doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. If the negative is do not steal, then maybe a positive outlook on this commandment is to give generously, to give of our time and our talents and our money in generous ways, to give to others who might not expect that we would be able to give to them, or that they would feel deserving of us giving them something. Probably the classic example of this would be Jesus's parable of the separation of the sheep and the goats, or Jesus telling us, just as you've done something to the least of one of my brethren, my brothers or my sisters, that you've also done it to me. If someone is hungry and you give them something to eat, if they're thirsty and you give them something to drink, if they are lacking clothing and you give them clothing, that if you've done it for one of the least, you've also done it for Jesus. There's always a lot more to these commandments that even seem so simple on the surface. A lot more to them once we kind of dig into them, and as we kind of expand out, well, what can this mean for us day to day? Two final things that I'll share, and one of those is that just like last week as we talked about adultery and kind of talked about Jesus forgiving the woman caught in adultery, that we also have the example of Jesus forgiving one of the thieves on the cross, as he is himself being hung between two thieves. Or, the word that we translate as thief can have various different meanings, but one of the ways that it can be interpreted is to say that these two men that were on each side of him were thieves, and that one kind of adds to the taunts of the crowd taunting Jesus, but one does not, and asks Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus offers forgiveness there, even in his own last moments. So as we have done these last few weeks, as we kind of conclude our time together with these recaps, we're going to look at what Jesus might be saying to us about the eighth commandment. Hamilton writes these at the end of each chapter. What Jesus might say to you is that your character is seen in the small things, and I see all the small things. I've seen every good and right and selfless act you've ever done. I've also seen the times that you took what wasn't yours. As I forgave the thief on the cross that day when he asked for mercy, I will forgive you. Don't forget, my child, that you'll find the deepest meaning and the greatest joy, not by what you acquire, but by what you give. Amen. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I will see you again on Sunday or next week during our next recap. Take care. Bye-bye.